Hello, welcome to March's episode of Hobby Bench. This is my monthly series where I talk about the things I've been up to in my hobby. What have I been collecting? What have I been building? What have I been playing? Where have I been? Did anyone catch me? Did I get away with it? And I also talk about what I'm doing on my channel. So what projects am I working on at the moment? And what cool stuff have I got coming up soon, very soon, that I'm really excited about? Honestly, I am super excited about some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about today. I hope that you are too. Right, let's start with the biggest bit of news, and that is that I have launched a Patreon. It is live right now. You can go to the link in the description and you can support me and the channel right there. This is something I've been thinking about for a little while. I've had a few people ask me questions about it. It was always a sort of thing at the back of my mind about if people enjoy the channel, if people want more of this kind of stuff. Maybe that's something that I would do because it obviously helps to make it more sustainable, helps with the cost of getting the games and the gear and all that sort of stuff. And really is just a big part of that longer journey of finding out whether or not this is something I could do with a bit more of my time and invest more of my time into the YouTube and the channel and that kind of stuff. So that is there now. If you want to support me and support the channel, there is no obligation at all. It is totally about if you have a few extra dollars that you want to throw my way or a few extra pounds, then I really am just absolutely humbled by anybody who chooses to do that. I am not going to be putting exclusive video content behind the Patreon, or at least not exclusive videos. I didn't want to close off a load of people. I do obviously want to get my stuff out there to as many people as possible, and I do want to reward people who are supporting me and supporting the channel. I just didn't want to restrict access to a load of stuff. So what you will get as a supporter of the channel via the Patreon is that obviously my absolute thanks. I am so grateful to anybody who chooses to do this. I will be running things like polls on the Patreon so that I can help get your input into what things I should prioritize as topics for future videos. So the first poll that's live right now, that will run for the first month, is which specialist game from Games Workshop should I focus on and prioritize as my next big history. So there are 4 options there. There is Mordheim, Blood Bowl, Necromunda, and Epic, and you can choose which one that you would most like to see. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to do the other ones, it just means that I'm going to be prioritizing this first. But I'm also going to be looking on there for suggestions and speaking to the community and trying to get your read on, okay, is this a good topic to do? I've been thinking about doing this game. What do you guys think? Is there something that I should be looking at more or spending a bit more time on? So I plan to be really super active there and talking with people. I'm also going to be doing a monthly update at the start of the month. The updates that I'm going to put in that sort of newsletter kind of thing is going to be a bit more specific around choices that I've made and things that worked and things that didn't work and whether or not I'm looking at this, that, or the other, and why I'm thinking about things in a certain way. The Patreon, it's very much about supporting me and the work, helping me to grow and sort of find the right avenues to go, and hopefully finding the things that you're more interested in and sort of speaking to that. I am also going to be looking at what else I can make part of that Patreon offering in the future. There may well be early access at some point. I am going to look at things like, would I put together a blooper reel or a gag reel of mistakes that I've made? Because Lord knows there have been a lot of mistakes and a lot of bloopers in these videos so far. Like I say, there is no obligation, so don't feel like you have to. I am super grateful for anybody who does, though, and yeah, thank you for watching and sharing and liking all of the videos that I've put together so far. There's a couple of people who dislike them, and that's fine as well. But if you want to give me more feedback and help me get better and avoid the dislikes, you can come over and we can have those conversations as well. So yes, that is the big news, or the biggest news from a channel perspective, is that I have launched a Patreon. You can check it out right now. Feel free to jump over there when this video finishes, or during this video whilst you've paused it, but come back and finish the video because the retention statistics matter a lot on YouTube, unfortunately. So, earlier this month, I went down to Nottingham to be part of the Warhammer World anniversary, their open day. Essentially, it's the store anniversary for the Warhammer World. I always love going to Warhammer World. The museum is absolutely amazing. I can literally spend all day, and I spent most of that day just wandering around the museum, taking notes, looking at stuff, taking photos. Absolutely adore it. Always have to make sure that I get a photo of myself alongside Mike McVeigh's Warhammer Quest diorama, because it is the most important single thing in Warhammer to me. It's so inspiring. It was just, I pored over the images of that in White Dwarf when it first came out. And that was part of what made Warhammer Quest like a really important part of my early hobby life. I had a very surreal experience where a viewer of the channel, Matt, hi Matt, actually recognised me in the street, just like literally the centre of Nottingham. Very surprising. I'm sure I was very dishevelled. I'd just been travelling and looked like even more of a mess than I usually do. But Matt was very, very nice. We had a great conversation. So yes, thanks Matt for running over and sort of saying hello. Just the most bizarre coincidence. I can't even believe it. It wasn't even at Warhammer World where this happened. It was literally just in the high street in Nottingham. So yes, I'm sure that will not become a common occurrence, but it was just a very, very funny, surreal moment. At Warhammer World, I got to be part of the Hobby Challenge. So this is where you get access to a huge bench full of sprues, just lots and lots of cast off sprues, loads of stuff from whatever they've been working on. So you can just grab whatever you want, and the intention for the Hobby Challenge is to take one of the anniversary miniatures. In my case, I took the Caradron Warrior, and then I basically found a load of Nurglings, and a few people were kind enough to give me some more Nurglings that they had found, and I put it all together and basically just created this little diorama of the Caradron guy being almost overwhelmed by Nurglings upon Nurglings upon Nurglings. I loved the idea of just having them climb up the sides of this statue and almost devouring him. There's obviously a lot of things in retrospect that I'd be like, oh, I'd change this bit or change that bit. But I actually was really pleased with this on the day. I loved having the Nurglings just sort of hanging off of bits and sort of making a mockery of the whole thing. There's one Nurgling who is stamping on the hands of his friend who's trying to climb up, and they judge it at the end of the day, and whoever's got the best one, who's kit bashed and then painted the best miniature, wins the scrap demon. So the golden demon, but made of scrap. So it's very, very fun. I didn't expect to get as into this as I thought I would, because I'm not the biggest modeler and sort of crafter or painter or anything like that. But I sat down and just having this just vast array of random sprues with random stuff, it was really, really cool. Very much a rare occurrence, because I don't think you often sit there with a load of sprues and just think, yeah, I can chop this sprue into loads of little bits. I'm not, I don't spend a lot of time kit bashing. I'm sure there are plenty of people who do that. For me, I normally take the sprues out of a box, look at the instructions, and then build the miniature as you're supposed to, as it's intended, not as you're supposed to. But you are building very much the miniature on the box, essentially. And yeah, occasionally I'll do head swaps, or I'll add an extra gun, or I'll switch out a weapon or another shield, or whatever it might be like that. In this case, though, because there were just so many sprues and so much cool stuff, I'm literally just like chopping bits and bobs out. I'll cut the arms off of that. I'm going to take the sword off of this. I'm going to take that shield off of there. They did an undercoat and then a zenithal highlight for me. Obviously, it could do with a lick of paint, but not being a great painter, I'm not sure when I will get around to that. Maybe at some point, hopefully. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It wasn't something I expected to spend a lot of time on, but I did get really into it. So fantastic stuff. Yeah, it was great. I didn't win, in case anybody was wondering. But the rest of the day was really, really cool. Got to see a load of really cool demo games and some exciting sort of one-off games that they put together. Also got to spend some time talking to the guys from Cubicle 7 about the Woofrup edition that they've released a load of stuff for already. But I was taking a look at the Imperial Zoo supplement, and it was the special edition, and it was absolutely fantastic. I tried several times to buy their demo copy. They refused to sell it to me, so I've had to order it online. But it is really, really nice. A really nice book. Oh, and I was able to get my hands on a couple of Plague Toads, some of the Nurgle guys from the Tamarkan adventure, the Warhammer Forge release, which is exciting to me because at some point I want to spend a lot of time on Tamarkan. It is such a just incredibly gorgeous book. I think it's a fantastic bit of storytelling. It is a part of that older version of Warhammer that I think is fantastic. So yeah, look out for some Tamarkan stuff at some point down the line. So, time for a bit of hobbying. What did I get up to this month? Well, I actually put together a rogue idol. I don't collect orcs or goblins anymore, But I love the Rogue Idol miniature. I just think it is a fantastic beast. It was released by the Warhammer Forge as part of their Monstrous Arcanum, so like 10 years ago. And until recently, you could actually buy it on Forge World, but then they just got rid of all of the Forge World Warhammer monsters, except for the Greater Demons, I think. So sadly, you can't get this anymore as of like a month or two ago. I was able to get one just around the time that they stopped selling them, though, so very fortunate in that regard. This is just a monstrous creation. I had to pin the limbs because they are so heavy, and I also had to pin the whole thing to the base. I know these are super, super basic skills, but this is not stuff I tend to do that often. I just like gluing guys together very, very simply. But this was quite it was relatively simple, and I think it looks really good. I did have to put some rocks underneath his feet because I've glued him at a weird angle, I guess. And then I also copied someone online who had put a snotling with a mushroom on top of theirs because I thought it just looked really, really fun. So I've put that together. Still need to do a lot of work to this guy to make him look as cool as I think he can, because it's just a fantastic miniature. But yeah, I have a Rogue Idol now. At some point I might run Idol of Gork and insert a Rogue Idol into that scenario somehow. I have no idea how, but I just think it's a really cool connection between those two things. So that is my random bit of Orcs and Goblins monsters that I've created. Obviously, I talked last time about starting an Empire army for Warhammer. I've been back and forth on which edition I'm working on. There are some really, really cool stuff. I love 8th edition quite a lot. I think the sort of that final end state of the Warhammer world before the end times, I think was really, really cool. I think they nailed a lot of stuff down and they'd created a lot of cool stuff. And I love things like the Demigryph riders and the knights that are on those guys in the Empire army. So I'm definitely going to be having some of those. I actually also really like the idea of bringing Gryph-hounds from Age of Sigmar into the Empire army in some way, so I'm going to be thinking about how to do that most effectively. But then I also really like that the earlier edition, 5th edition, for instance, the first edition of the Empire army book, includes rules for ogres and the dwarves and the halflings all being part of. Halflings, need to enunciate properly there. Making those a part of an Empire army, I think is really fun as well. Having this sort of mixed bag of different units that form up your Empire army, that's really fun to me. I'm a big fan of that. So I'm thinking about doing that. That 5th edition Dogs of War army book, there's some really cool stuff in there that I quite like the idea of. And what I'm going to do is make a Marienburg Empire army. And I was thinking, given that the Gargoyles of Barda are from Marienburg and the very, very first appearance of Marienburg, what if I took the Gargoyle models and then used the rules for the Dogs of War Birdmen and make that a part of that army? So I'm all over the shop. Basically, I'm doing an Empire army from like 3 or 4 different editions of Warhammer. Somehow I'm going to make it work. I think one of the things that I really like about building an army is building from the stuff that excites you. So what do you see in the army book? What do you see in the heavy metal images? What do you see in the games that you've witnessed or seen in stores or whatever that really excited you? And then sort of just grabbing all of that and creating something from it. And then kind of headcanoning it all together and making it work in the lore and the story of your game. Even if it doesn't like totally legally work in the rules or the points or the army lists for the game. As long as you're not doing stuff that's just obviously exploitative and over the top, as long as your opponent agrees, why not just have fun with it? I'm not a tournament player at all. I'm not playing serious games like that. I'm playing story-led games. So just creating armies that I think are fun, that fill me with the sort of excitement and the enjoyment, that's what I'm all about. So that is how I'm progressing with my Empire army at the moment. I did manage to get hold of some of Manan's blades, so I'm really excited about putting those guys together. My ridiculous mind, because it's a Marienburg army and I'm using the Gargoyles of Barda from Marienburg and I'm using Manan's blades from Marienburg and other stuff as well. Yeah, you can see this one coming a mile off, but I am really, really becoming a little bit obsessed about trying to get hold of the Marienburg landship, because that is an incredible, incredible miniature. It's just the right side of silly that I love, and it's great. So that is probably going to become a part of my ridiculous quest now. So we'll see how that one works out over the next few months. And yeah, pray for me, because it's a very, very silly thing to try and get hold of at this point, because they're very rare now. So I actually used some of these Empire guys in a skirmish game that I played with a good friend of mine recently. We took a really odd approach to this one. Because I am really into the old world right now, I'm reading a lot of stuff about it, I'm really, really having an old world renaissance. So I wanted to use this Marienburg army that I'm building up. He is very active in Age of Sigmar at the moment in terms of the lore and the armies. So he's got a really cool Khorne army at the moment. So what we did was have a ridiculous situation where a wizard has hired some Marienburg mercenaries to defend his tower. He's then done a very odd ritual that has caused him and the Marienburg mercenaries to get sucked through time and space into the mortal realm. So they've just popped out of the old world, popped into the realm of Shaiish, and there happens to be a load of Khorne guys who are just wandering by. So we did a very fun and silly and small scenario. We actually didn't even use any Games Workshop rules. So we used one-page rules is Age of Fantasy skirmish rules, because we wanted it to be really simple, really, really quick. It was all about the story, basically. And those rules, I still like a lot of Age of Sigmar's rules. I like the Warhammer rules. These were some fun rules as well. I actually thought, it made the game a super, super quick, super light, breezy affair, which was great. Exactly what we were looking for at the time. It was closer than I thought it was going to be, but ultimately my guys did get pretty much tabled. But it was a good game. We had really good dice, really nice, fun turns with lots of story and lots of storytelling. So yeah, it was fantastic. That's exactly the kind of game that I look forward to playing, and we're going to be playing again soon as well. So yes, a success. Even though not a success for my guys, but you know what I mean. Time for a bit of book club, I think. So I did talk last time about reading the City of Secrets book. So this was by Nick Horth. It's a Legends of the Age of Sigmar. It's one of the earliest novels, I think, that they set in Sigmar. It is not what I was hoping for, to be honest. So to be perfectly candid, I didn't finish reading it, and that wasn't because it was really bad or anything like that. It just didn't grab me at all. So I read about a third of it in the end, and it was a real slog to get through because I just wasn't getting what I wanted out of it. I don't know if that's because I expected something different or I wanted something different, but basically it doesn't have chapter breaks. It has act breaks, but they're like quite far apart. It read like a stream of consciousness. Now I guess from a storytelling perspective, it's all about a guy who has been ambushed and then is sort of on the run and things are happening to him. So I guess that does make sense to sort of pace it in that way, where he's just not able to catch a break. So there are no chapter breaks because everything leads into everything else. For me, that's not really how I like to read a book. I do like really clearly defined chapters. So I like to be able to read a chapter and then sort of put it down and go, okay, I've done that chapter right now. So with it just continuing and just being this sort of stream of consciousness, it didn't really work for me from a pacing perspective. But then also from a world building perspective, it wasn't quite what I was looking for either. Now, I do like the Age of Sigmar world, the Mortal Realms. I think there's some really fun stuff, that kind of overblown, big sci-fi, high fantasy stuff. What I got from the book, though, was a bit too much heavy-handed world building where essentially it felt, and this is purely me, I'm not trying to be a sort of critic here or anything, but it felt to me a bit too much like another invented word was just dropped in every other sentence. So you would just say, well, we're going to see this, we're going to go and see that, we're going to do this, we're going to do the other. And it was trying to sort of build a world in its entirety in one go. And that didn't really work for me either. And especially having just read Drachenfels, which I think gets the world building absolutely right. That paints a picture of the old world as a lived-in place, and you get small snippets of the wider world through the experiences of the central characters. This book felt a bit too much like it was laying it all on and just trying to say, no, guys, honestly, there's a big wide world out here. You can trust us because I'm going to tell you the names of everything that's in it in one go. Not a big win for me at the moment. But what I have started reading is Ignorant Armies. So I'm taking it a step even further back and going to one of the first novels or books that was published in the old Old World from GW Books. This is an anthology of short stories. It includes the first Jack Yeovil or Kim Newman story before Drachenfels, as well as the first Gotrek and Felix appearances. It is great so far. I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, I guess it just speaks to not just the setting that I prefer, but I guess a way of writing that I prefer as well. And it's really prompted me to think, should I try and do some sort of book club around these old original Warhammer titles and 40k titles, to be fair? Go back to the early days of the GW publishing and basically just do like, one a month, and then maybe do a deeper dive examination of it, maybe have a conversation, maybe get someone else to come and join me to talk about them as we read through them. And maybe read through them in release order as well. So yeah, leave that one with me because I'm enjoying this a lot. I'm also currently working my way through The House of Hell by Steve Jackson. So this is a fighting fantasy book. It's a really fun one. It's quite a brutal one. I'm going to be talking about this more soon. I am about to start X-Mag issue 3. So this is an anthology comic. It was a gift that a friend of mine got for me, a very generous gift. It is full of lovely looking stories, some great comic book art, lots of different styles, and there is an extremely cute personified cauldron that I'm very excited to read more about. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. I talked a bit about Slaying the Dragon, so the history of D&D last time. I'm still reading that, so I've not finished it. So I won't talk too much about this one right now. I will be talking about that next time, though. And then something else that I'm going to be reading very, very soon is what you'll find in this enormous folder thing. I don't know what you call this. It's not a fool's cap wallet, but whatever it is. Role-playing game Dark Matter that I've talked about previously. It was TSR's part of TSR's Alternity line, a sci-fi setting that they created to go alongside Dungeons & Dragons. And one of the campaign settings for that was Dark Matter, which was very, very much like the X-Files, 1998, 1999, lots of conspiracy stuff, technology stuff, fantastic setting. I'll be releasing a video on that shortly. I'm rereading the fiction that was released to go alongside that setting. They did 5 novels. One of them didn't get a physical release. It was just a PDF. And I printed the whole thing off and have stored it in here the whole time. So I'm rereading that. So, channel update. I talked at the top of the video about the creation of the Patreon. I'll just remind everybody I created a Patreon. Feel free to go and support me there if you are able to. There's no obligation. I did also want to talk about a video that I did at the very end of last month, the end of Feb, with a YouTube buddy of mine, Amalgam Ash. He interviewed me for his channel and we talked about getting started on YouTube. And then also we played a sort of virtual version of Hero Quest, sort of narrated it and kind of created a bit of a story as we played through it. So that was really, really fun. It was an awesome opportunity for me as well because I got to use some of the American Hero Quest expansions. So we used the Elf Quest pack, which I had never used, so I got to use the Female Elf Warrior. It was a really, really fun little video that we did. So that's over on Amalgamesh's channel. I'll link it below. If you want to hear 2 hours of me chatting biscuits and sort of having a great conversation with Ash, then you can go and check that out. So I wanted to talk a bit about the sort of shows, for want of a better word, or strands, or playlists, I guess, that I've been creating on YouTube so far. I obviously have got the GW histories. I think those are going quite well. There's a few I've got in plan that I'm really excited about. I was supposed to be working on a Drachenfels video. It's not as far along as I had hoped by this point in time. I've had to put it to one side with good reason that I'll talk about soon. I obviously have done some non-Games Workshop histories as well about role-playing games and board games. I think those have been really, really interesting to work on. I definitely want to continue doing them. So there's a Star Trek history, there's a Dragonlance history, important for the channel long term because I think that it expands my mind and my references and sort of brings other people in. There's stuff I just really want to talk about, so I'm going to continue doing them, probably at a pace of around 1 a month. I think that's about right. The Ghost Castle one that just went out, I think there were a few, let's put it mildly, technical difficulties in the filming of it. I have got some new kit, so I've got this boom arm and I've got a new mic. I obviously hadn't focused things up when I recorded it properly, so I was sort of out of focus and the mic was in focus. It kind of looked like a weird green screen effect to me. So I apologize again for that. Hopefully it wasn't too distracting because I thought the Ghost Castle story was interesting and was worth telling. Those kinds of videos, stuff that's so far away from the sort of tabletop things that we're talking about normally, They'll probably be rarer. I do still want to explore some of that space as well. Let me know if it's just too far off what everything else is. So yeah, interested to get feedback on that one as we go. We've then got Liber Memoria. So you may have seen a couple of these videos that I've put out. These are much shorter, so less than 5-minute videos about a new release from Games Workshop. I've done 2 so far. I did one on Castellan Creed when Ursula Creed came out. Probably not the most interesting topic. I think a lot of people just were not that interested in that as an area of history. So that one has performed really badly. One of my worst performing videos on the channel. The other one was about Regiments of Renown. So obviously they've released some new Regiments of Renown for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. They've repackaged pre-existing miniatures. So I was able to look at the history of the Regiments of Renown when they were sort of a bit more interesting than they are now. That, I think, performed a lot better. It was far more interesting as a topic, I think, but because it was also bigger, I had to rush a little bit through it, I feel. It's kind of swings and roundabouts. I think as a format, I'd like to continue working on it. I'd like to get to a place where I can do a comfortable, less than 5-minute video that does pull on the thread of a recent release and kind of trace it back through at least a few of its high points over history. I think that's an interesting way of tackling new release stuff. I think it will be beneficial for the channel in the long run to have a way of talking about new releases whilst remaining true to what I do here, which is look at the history and the sort of longer term experience of stuff. So I'm still working it out. I think hopefully we'll get there at some point. The other sort of new format that I've experimented with recently was Battle Retort. The idea behind this is a more narrative focused battle report. So not focusing on the rules, not really getting too much into the dice rolls and the card draws and all that kind of stuff, really letting a story emerge and characters emerge from the events that take place during the playing of the game. I chose Lost Relics because it's super simple in terms of a rule set. The first mission in that book, the first quest, is also very, very simple. So it's really, really quick and easy to play and to explain. But I was hoping that I'd still be able to get a bit of a narrative and a story that would come from it. And I feel like I have sort of proven that point a bit, and it did work well enough. I had a lot of fun kind of putting it together. It was probably a lot more work than I thought it might be, but it's definitely something I want to continue experimenting with. I'm now looking at, okay, do I continue that story and continue going through the Lost Relics adventures? Could I apply the same approach to something more complex? So whether that is Warhammer Quest 95 and maybe do a campaign in that, or battle report of a war game with the same narrative feel. So I still want to explore how to progress it. Again, welcome your thoughts on that and sort of how to best move forward with it, because I want to make sure that it's stuff that people are interested in. GW genealogies, I'm definitely going to continue with these. Slightly different to the histories, because these are just very much about tracing the sort of the family line of a set of miniatures. So I obviously did cats as my first ever video on YouTube. Following that Liber Memoria on the Regiments of Renown, it really did feel like there was way more material to explore. So I quite like the idea of doing almost a lore or a genealogy video around some of those regiments specifically. I mean, there's obviously great cases like Bugman's Rangers. There is probably enough material to do a full video on the origins, appearances, and lore of Bugman and his Rangers over time. And then I also wanted to mention the podcast episodes that I've started recording with my very good gaming friend Rob. That first episode is going to drop this coming month. So in April, Big April I'm calling it, because I want this to be a really big month for the channel. So I'm going to be releasing probably around week 2 or 3 that podcast episode. Big April, so called because obviously I'm launching the Patreon, but also that will be my 6th month on YouTube. So I really wanted to celebrate it with some big stuff. So to that end, I will be releasing my history of Warhammer itself. So the game Warhammer, you'll be getting 5 different videos on Warhammer over the course of the month. The first will be an overview of each edition of Warhammer that was released, all 8 editions. So that overview will be nice and tight and short, and will just give you a sort of highlights of all of the different editions. That's going to be coming out in the first week of April. As well, the History of Warhammer Deep Dive Part 1. And these deep dives will take 2 editions in each video, and they will look at the players behind it, the designers who actually created these games, the context and the history. So very much like my traditional GW histories, but focusing on 2 editions of Warhammer at a time. So there'll be 4 of those, and they'll come out over the course of the month of April, 1 a week, and they're going to be on a Thursday, so you'll be seeing those. And I'll still be releasing a regular Tuesday video as well. And there is also going to be the history of fighting fantasy. So the game books that were released by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingston. I've put something together that I think is really, really fun and interesting and exciting for some of this stuff, especially for that fighting fantasy video. So look forward to that. I hope you look forward to that. But this is big, big April. I want to really grow the channel and make a big impact over the course of this month, my 6th month on YouTube. So please, please, if you like the videos, do like them and leave comments and share them as well. And also, and not to give you guys a load of extra work, but if there is a video that you've seen of mine before that you really liked, if you could get out there and share it in communities and take it to the people who might be interested in it as well. I really want to get people talking about the channel and sort of try and use this month of celebration to really expand the channel base and get more people interested and coming along and joining the Patreon and subscribing to the channel and commenting and liking, all that sort of good stuff. Because I think this is the sort of, hopefully, is almost that turning point of where we go, okay, we've just achieved 3,000 subscribers, which is amazing. Thank you so much. Where can we take this next? How much bigger can we get the channel? Because when we get bigger, it opens the door to more stuff, more cool stuff. Big, big April. I think this is going to be an exciting month for me, hopefully for you guys as well. Some really cool content. Hopefully you're excited about some of that content I've talked about, because I think there is some fun stuff there, yeah. So I will leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. I am Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery. Oh, and when you watch that fighting fantasy video, just make sure that you are well equipped before you take on any monstrous creatures.